This might be a bigger problem than anyone expected because the Seattle Seahawks just committed massive money to Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and somehow their quarterback, Sam Darnold, is still waiting. Not because he played poorly, not because he doesn't deserve it, but because of a rule, a policy. And that policy might quietly be putting their entire offensive future at risk. Because think about the timing here. Darnold just came off a Pro Bowl season, won a Super Bowl, played the best football of his career, and he's being paid like the 15th best quarterback in the league. That's not just value, that's a bargain. So naturally, you'd expect the next step. Lock him in, extend him early, build around him with clarity, especially after committing record-breaking money to your WR1. But that's not happening. And this is where it gets interesting, because this isn't about performance. It's about philosophy. The Seahawks don't extend players with more than 1 year left on their deal. No exceptions, no negotiations, just a hard line. And on paper, that sounds disciplined. It prevents overreaction, it protects the cap, it keeps leverage with the team. But here's the problem. Quarterbacks don't operate like other positions. You can't treat them the same way, because when you have one, a real one, everything else depends on that stability. And right now, Seattle is choosing structure over certainty. Now let's break down what that actually means. By not extending Darnold now, they're pushing the decision into next year, which sounds harmless, but it changes the entire dynamic because next year, the price goes up. That's how the quarterback market works. It never stays still. If Darnold plays well again, you're no longer negotiating at $33 million per year. You're negotiating at $45, maybe $50 million. And suddenly that discipline becomes expensive, very expensive. But here's the other side of it. If Darnold doesn't replicate his performance of Rahman, now you've delayed the decision only to face uncertainty again. So either way, you're not reducing risk, you're shifting it into the future. And that's where things start to get uncomfortable. Because while Seattle waits, they're still building the roster. They've already committed to Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Devon Witherspoon is next. 2 cornerstone players, 2 major financial investments. And both of those decisions assume one thing, that the quarterback situation is stable. But is it? Because if you don't extend Darnold now, you're basically saying we believe in you, but not enough to commit yet. And that creates tension, not publicly, not dramatically, but subtly. Because quarterbacks notice that, agents notice that, the locker room notices that. And this is where it gets even more interesting. Seattle has already been here before. With Geno Smith, same situation, same policy, same outcome, no extension when he wanted one. And eventually, that relationship shifted. Now history might be repeating itself, and the question becomes, is the policy actually helping or quietly creating friction with the most important position on the team? Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger strategy. John Schneider's approach has worked before. He's built championship rosters. He trusts the system, and consistency in philosophy is valuable. But the league evolves, and quarterback economics evolve even faster. What worked 5 years ago doesn't always work now, because today teams are more aggressive. They extend early, they secure the position, they eliminate uncertainty as soon as possible, because they understand one thing: quarterback instability spreads. It affects play calling, roster planning, cap structure, everything. And right now, Seattle is choosing to live with that instability a little longer. Now, here's the hidden layer in all of this. This decision might not be about money at all. It might be about proof, because one great season, even a Super Bowl run, doesn't always guarantee long-term consistency. The Seahawks might be asking a simple question: can Darnold do it again? Can he sustain it? Can he prove this isn't a peak, but a new baseline? And if that's the case, then waiting makes sense from their perspective. But it still comes with risk, because if the answer is yes, you're paying more later. If the answer is no, you're back to searching for a quarterback again. And that's the cycle teams try to avoid at all costs. Now tie this back to Jaxon Smith-Njigba, because that extension changes the expectations. You don't pay a receiver like that unless you believe your offense is ready to elevate, to produce, to compete at a high level consistently. But elite receivers need quarterback stability. They need timing, trust, chemistry. And if that foundation isn't locked in long term, you're building on something that could shift at any moment. And that's the contradiction. Seattle is investing like a team that has certainty, while operating like a team that's still evaluating. And those two things don't always align. So the real question isn't whether Sam Darnold deserves an extension. He probably does. The real question is this: is Seattle's commitment to their philosophy stronger than their need for quarterback stability? Because if it is, they're going to find out the hard way what that choice really costs. At first glance, this feels like a mistake. You've got a quarterback coming off a Pro Bowl season and a Super Bowl run, and you're not extending him? That's usually how teams lose players. But in this case, the Seattle Seahawks aren't hesitating. They're following a rule, and that rule explains everything. Because no matter how well Sam Darnold played, Seattle simply doesn't do early extensions. Under GM John Schneider, the policy has been consistent for years. No new deal until you're entering the final year. No exceptions. Not even for a Super Bowl winning quarterback. That's why this isn't really about Darnold's performance. It's about organizational discipline. And if you zoom out, it actually makes a lot more sense. The Seahawks just made Jaxon Smith-Njigba the centerpiece of their future with a massive extension. Devon Witherspoon is likely next. They're locking in their young core first. Cost-controlled stars. Long-term pillars. Quarterback, that's where they stay flexible. Even with Darnold playing at a high level, Seattle isn't ready to tie itself down financially yet. Because once you extend a QB, everything changes. Cap flexibility tightens, future roster moves become harder. You're committing to that version of the team. And the Seahawks aren't there yet. They want another year of proof, another year to confirm that what they just saw from Darnold wasn't a peak, but the new normal. It's a cold approach, but it's also how Schneider has built winners before. Still, there is risk here. If Darnold repeats his performance or gets even better, his price goes up a lot. And suddenly what looks like discipline today could look like hesitation tomorrow. That's the gamble. Seattle's betting that. Either Darnold stays consistent and they pay him later, or he regresses and they avoid a massive mistake. No middle ground. So yeah, it might feel questionable, but for the Seahawks, this isn't a deviation. It's identity. At first glance, this feels like a mistake. You've got a quarterback coming off a Pro Bowl season and a Super Bowl run, and you're not extending him? That's usually how teams lose players. But in this case, the Seattle Seahawks aren't hesitating. They're following a rule, and that rule explains everything. Because no matter how well Sam Darnold played, Seattle simply doesn't do early extensions. Under GM John Schneider, the policy has been consistent for years. No new deal until you're entering the final year. No exceptions. Not even for a Super Bowl winning quarterback. That's why this isn't really about Darnold's performance. It's about organizational discipline. And if you zoom out, it actually makes a lot more sense. The Seahawks just made Jaxon Smith-Njigba the centerpiece of their future with a massive extension.